You can't even imagine what Native Americans ate. Right now, you will immerse yourself in the culinary culture of Native Americans and learn secrets you never even knew existed. This is the legacy of the indigenous peoples of North America, who for centuries cultivated and harvested fruits that were perfectly adapted to the local climate and had unique flavors. These fruits were not just food, they were part of the culture, medicine, and philosophy of survival in the wild. Many of them have been forgotten, replaced by commercial varieties, but they have not disappeared. Watch this video to the end to find out which fruit Native Americans called Indian ice cream and how they managed to make a dessert out of it without milk or sugar. What I am about to show you is considered by many gardeners to be a secret that others pay thousands for. Hidden in the shady forests of eastern North America is a true gastronomic paradox, the pawpaw or melon tree. It is the largest edible fruit growing in this region, but its taste is completely unlike what you would expect from a northern plant. Outwardly, pawpaw fruits resemble short greenish bananas or mangoes. They grow in clusters, hidden under the large, drooping leaves of the tree. Their skin is thin and delicate, and as they ripen, it turns yellow and becomes covered with dark spots, signaling that they are ready to eat. The flesh of ripe azamina has a creamy, custard-like texture similar to pudding. Its color varies from pale yellow to orange. Inside are large, smooth black seeds arranged in 2 rows. But the most amazing thing about the pawpaw is its taste. It is a complex mixture of tropical notes. You can detect hints of banana, mango, pineapple, and even melon. It is for this unique flavor profile that it was so highly prized by indigenous peoples, including the Iroquois. The pawpaw was an important source of nutrition in the fall. It was eaten fresh, simply by scooping the flesh out of the skin. Thanks to its high nutritional value and calorie content, it helped people build up their strength before the long winter. Despite its incredible taste, the pawpaw never became a commercial product. The reason is simple. Ripe fruits only keep for a few days, and their thin skin is easily damaged during transport. This made it a secret fruit, available only to those who know where and when to look for it. Indigenous peoples also dried the flesh of the azamina, turning it into a kind of fruit paste. This allowed them to preserve the harvest for a longer period of time. This concentrated product was a valuable source of energy during winter expeditions. Today, interest in azamina is reviving. Enthusiasts and breeders are developing new varieties in an attempt to improve its shelf life and transportability. Perhaps in the future, this forgotten fruit will return to our tables. Azamina trees can still be found in the wild if you know where to look. They prefer moist, shady lowlands and riverbanks. Finding such a tree during the ripening season is like discovering a treasure. We would love to hear your thoughts. What forgotten or rare local fruits grow in your region? Write about it in the comments. Are you ready to learn the truth about the wild orchards that fed entire tribes of the Great Plains? When we imagine the prairies, we think of endless fields of grass. But in reality, this landscape was dotted with dense thickets of American wild plums, which formed veritable natural orchards. These plum thickets, or plum groves, were important ecosystems. They provided shelter and food not only for humans, but also for a variety of animals. For tribes such as the Lakota and Cheyenne, these places were invaluable resource centers. American plum fruits are smaller than their garden counterparts. Their color varies from bright red to yellow. Their skin is quite tart, but the flesh is juicy and sweet, with a pleasant sourness. The wild plum harvest season was an important event in the calendar of indigenous peoples. Families gathered together to prepare this valuable resource for the winter. It was a time not only of hard work, but also of socializing and celebration. The plums were eaten fresh from the branches, enjoying their bright flavor, but most of the harvest was processed. The most popular method of preservation was sun drying. To do this, the plums were laid out on mats made of skins or grass. The sun and wind of the prairies slowly removed the moisture from them. The result was a concentrated, sweet and sour dried fruit that could be stored for months. Dried plums were an important ingredient in winter dishes. They were added to meat soups to give them flavor and enrich them with vitamins. They were also soaked in water to make a kind of compote. These thickets also served as natural hedges and fortifications. Their dense, thorny branches created a barrier that could slow down an enemy or direct a herd of bison in the right direction during a hunt. Thus, the plum provided not only food but also protection. Today, the American plum can still be found in the wild along rivers and forest edges. It is also valued by modern gardeners for its hardiness and disease resistance. It is a living reminder of how generous the wild can be. But the plum was just one of many gifts of the prairies. Are you ready to learn about a berry that was so important that it became the basis of the Native Americans' main energy food and was used to make a unique dessert? I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Great Plains cuisine. There is a berry that has an amazing chemical property that allowed indigenous peoples to make a whipped dessert from it, reminiscent of modern ice cream or mousse. We are talking about Buffaloberry or Buffaloberry. Shepherd's purseberries are small, round, and bright red. They grow on thorny bushes in the Great Plains and Rocky Mountains. They taste very tart and sour and are rarely eaten fresh. The secret of this berry lies in its saponin content. These are the same substances found in soap root that give it its foaming ability. It is thanks to saponins that shepherdea can turn into a thick, stable foam. To prepare a dessert called wojapi in the Lakota language, the berries were first mashed. Then a little water and some sweetener, such as wild cherry juice or maple syrup, were added to the mixture. After that, the most important stage began. The mixture was beaten vigorously with a special whisk made of twigs. The saponins in the berries reacted with the air and water, creating a rich, thick foam. The process was laborious and required strength and patience. The result was a light, airy, pink-colored dessert. Its taste was sweet and sour and refreshing. This dish was a real treat and was often served at celebrations and ceremonies. Indigenous peoples knew that it was not advisable to consume too much of this dessert at one time. Large amounts of saponins could cause stomach upset. This knowledge was passed down from generation to generation. In addition to dessert, shepherdea berries were used to make sauces for meat. Their tart, sour taste perfectly complemented the fatty bison meat. The berries were also dried for the winter to be used as a seasoning. Picking shepherdea berries was no easy task due to the thorny branches of the shrub. Usually a skin was spread under the bush, and then the branches were beaten with a stick. The ripe berries fell onto the bedding, which greatly simplified the harvesting process. Shepherd's purse is a striking example of the indigenous people's deep knowledge of plant chemistry. They were able to discover the unique properties of this berry and develop a technology for its use. This knowledge was the result of hundreds of years of observation and experimentation. What if everything you were taught about cherries is outdated? For the tribes of the Great Plains, there was a berry that was much more important than any cherry, the chokecherry. It was not just an ingredient, but a cornerstone of their culinary tradition and culture. Chokecherries are small, dark red, almost black when ripe. They grow in dense clusters that are easy to pick. The berries taste very tart and astringent, hence their English name, chokecherry. The tartness of the berries is caused by their high tannin content. However, the indigenous peoples knew how to turn this disadvantage into an advantage. They never ate the berries raw in large quantities, but subjected them to special processing. The most unique aspect of chokecherry use was the processing of the pits. Unlike the European tradition, where cherry pits are always removed, Native Americans crushed the berries whole, along with the pits. For this, they used special stone pestles and mortars. The crushed pulp and crushed pits were formed into patties and dried in the sun. The pits, rich in oils and proteins, neutralized the tartness of the pulp and gave the final product a pleasant, almond-like aroma. It was an ingenious way to increase the nutritional value of the product. These dried flatbreads were the basis for many dishes. They could be eaten on their own, like an energy bar, but most often they were used to make the famous wojapi sauce. To make wojapi, the cakes were soaked in water and simmered over low heat until they became a thick, jam-like mass. Sometimes other berries or maple syrup were added for sweetness. This sauce was served with meat or eaten as a separate dish. Bird cherry was also a key ingredient in pemmican, a concentrated food for warriors and hunters. Crushed dried berries were mixed with ground dried meat and melted fat. This high-calorie mixture could be stored for years and provided sustenance on long journeys. The harvesting and processing of bird cherry was an important social event. The women of the tribe gathered together to prepare the berries for winter. This collaborative work was accompanied by songs and stories. But not all the fruit was destined for festive sauces and energy bars. In the next chapter, we will learn about a fruit that was a modest but reliable source of food that required a special approach. In the southern part of the eastern woods and on the edges of the prairies grows a tree whose fruits teach patience. The American persimmon offers its sweet gifts only to those who know how to wait. Its fruits become truly delicious only after the first autumn frosts. American persimmon fruits are smaller than their Asian relatives found in stores. They are spherical in shape and orange in color. Before ripening, they are extremely tart and astringent due to their high tannin content. The first frost triggers a chemical process in the fruit that breaks down the tannins and converts the starch into sugar. It is after this that persimmons acquire their honey-sweet, slightly spicy taste. Indigenous peoples were well aware of this secret of nature. Harvesting persimmons was simple. All you had to do was shake the branch and the ripe fruits would fall to the ground. They were collected and eaten fresh as a seasonal delicacy. It was one of nature's last gifts before the onset of winter. However, most of the harvest was used for preservation. The most common method was to make fruit paste or persimmon bread. To do this, the pulp was separated from the seeds, formed into cakes, and dried in the sun or by the fire. These dried cakes were a concentrated source of sugar and energy. They could be stored throughout the winter and used as needed. They were a natural sweetener that replaced sugar. Sometimes dried persimmons were ground into powder. This powder was used to sweeten drinks and other dishes. It was also mixed with corn flour to make a special kind of bread. In addition to its nutritional value, persimmons also had practical uses. The hard, dense wood of this tree was used to make tools and weapons. It was valued for its strength and durability. Indigenous peoples observed animals to determine the best time to harvest persimmons. When raccoons and opossums began to actively eat the fruit, it was a sure sign that they had reached their peak sweetness. This is an example of how people lived in harmony with the world around them. The American persimmon is a lesson that everything has its time. Its tartness is a defense against premature harvesting, and its sweetness is a reward for patience. This is a philosophy embedded in the very heart of nature. Secrets passed down from generation to generation are often hidden in the simplest things. For many tribes, from the subarctic forests to the Great Plains, that secret was the serviceberry. This humble berry was so important that it became an integral part of the main survival food, pemmican. Urga is a shrub or small tree that is covered with beautiful white flowers in the spring. In the summer, small berries similar to blueberries ripen on it. The color of the berries varies from red to dark purple, almost black. Urga tastes sweet, with a slight nutty almond flavor. This feature makes it unique among other wild berries. It can be eaten straight from the bush and was a favorite treat for everyone. But the main value of urga was its ability to dry well. Indigenous peoples spread the berries in a thin layer in the sun. Dried urga retained its sweetness and nutrients, making it an ideal product for long-term storage. It was in its dried form that urga became a key ingredient in pemmican. It was mixed with crushed dried bison meat and melted fat. The berries not only added sweetness and vitamins, but also acted as a natural preservative, preventing the product from spoiling. Pemmican was a versatile food. It was light, high in calories, and did not spoil for years. Warriors, hunters, and travelers took it with them on long journeys, confident that they would always have a source of energy. The ripening period for urgi berries, which fell in June, hence one of its names, Juneberry, was a time of large harvests. Different groups of people gathered in places where the berries grew abundantly. It was a time for trade, alliances, and ceremonies. The process of picking and drying the berries was mainly women's work. Women passed on their knowledge and skills to their daughters, teaching them how to properly pick and harvest urga. This was an important part of education and cultural continuity. Urga is still popular in Canada, where it is called Saskatoon. There it is grown on an industrial scale and used to make pies, jams, and sauces. But its wild ancestors still grow throughout North America, reminding us of their rich history. But what did people eat when they wanted something not just sweet, but with a more complex flavor? In the next chapter, we will look at a fruit that blurred the line between fruit and vegetable. Among the tall grasses of the prairies and in forest glades, you can find an unusual plant with fruits hidden in paper lanterns. This is Physalis, or ground cherry. Its fruits offered a unique taste that combines sweetness with a slight vegetal note. The fruit of the ground cherry is a small cherry-sized berry enclosed in a thin, parchment-like shell. This shell, or husk, dries out as it ripens and changes color from green to straw yellow. When the fruit ripens, it often falls to the ground along with its lantern. The taste of ripe Physalis is difficult to describe unequivocally. It is sweet, but with a refreshing sourness and a complex aftertaste in which you can detect notes of pineapple, tomato, and even vanilla. This versatility made it a very universal product. Indigenous peoples consume Physalis both fresh and dried. Fresh berries were a pleasant treat during harvesting. They were simply cleaned of their papery shell and eaten. To preserve them for the winter, the berries were dried right in their husks. This natural packaging protected the fruit from dirt and insects. The dried berries resembled raisins and were a good addition to the winter diet. Physalis was also used to make various sauces and seasonings. It was crushed and mixed with other ingredients to make a sweet and sour paste. This paste could be added to meat dishes. Some tribes used Physalis for medicinal purposes. It was believed that decoctions from different parts of the plant could help with certain ailments. This shows how closely food and medicine were linked in their culture. This humble fruit in a paper lantern is a reminder that the most interesting flavors are often hidden right under our feet. You just need to know where to look and how to use nature's gifts. In the southeast, on the border between forests and plains, grows a vine with some of the most exotic and beautiful flowers in North America. This is the meat red passion flower, the only species of passion fruit that grows in this region. Its fruits, known as maypops, were a valuable seasonal product. The passion flower has a complex and unusual structure. Its bright petals and corona filaments create a pattern that seemed to early European settlers to be a symbol of religious stories. For indigenous peoples, it was simply a sign that fruit would soon appear. The passion flower fruit is an oval-shaped berry, about the size of a chicken egg. When unripe, it is green, and as it ripens, it turns yellow. The ripeness of the fruit was determined by sound. When shaken, the seeds inside should rattle. Inside the fruit is juicy, fragrant pulp with many seeds. The pulp has a jelly-like consistency. It has a sweet and sour taste with a bright tropical aroma, characteristic of all types of passion fruit. Passion fruit was eaten very simply. The fruit was broken in half and the contents were eaten together with the seeds. The crunchy seeds created an interesting contrast with the tender pulp. It was a refreshing and invigorating treat on hot summer days. Indigenous peoples used not only the fruit, but also other parts of the plant. Passion fruit leaves and roots were used in folk medicine as a sedative. Tea made from the leaves was believed to help with insomnia and anxiety. Maypop often grew in open, sunny places, in fields and along roadsides. The plant spread rapidly, creating entire thickets. This made harvesting the fruit easy and accessible. The name maypop comes from the characteristic popping sound that ripe fruit makes when stepped on. This sound was familiar to everyone who lived near this plant. Today, wild passion flower can still be found in the southern United States. It is also beginning to be cultivated by amateur gardeners, attracted by its beautiful flowers and delicious fruit. This plant is an example of how nature can create amazing things. It combines the beauty of a flower, the usefulness of a fruit, and medicinal properties. In the north, in the cool, moist forests, where the Cree and other subarctic peoples lived, there is a shrub covered with clusters of bright red berries. This is the American cranberry, often mistakenly called tall cranberry. Despite the external similarity of the berries, it is a completely different plant that played an important role in the lives of northern peoples. American viburnum berries ripen in late autumn and can hang on the branches all winter. They have a very tart and sour taste, which becomes milder after the first frost. Inside each berry is a single large flat seed. Due to their acidity, the berries were rarely eaten raw. Their main use was in processed form. They were used to make thick, sour sauces that went well with moose or deer meat. For winter storage, the berries were picked and stored in cool places. They could be frozen naturally, which allowed them to retain their freshness. They were also used to make jams and jellies, using maple syrup as a sweetener. Viburnum was not only food, but also an important medicinal plant. The bark of the shrub was valued for its properties. A decoction of the bark was used in folk medicine to relieve muscle spasms and pain. Picking berries was an important part of preparing for the long and harsh winter. They were one of the few available sources of vitamin C during the cold season. This helped to prevent scurvy and maintain health. Today, American viburnum is valued for its decorative qualities and beneficial berries. It is planted in gardens and parks. Its berries are still used to make sauces, jellies, and syrups, continuing the traditions established by the indigenous peoples of the North. In the forests of eastern North America, there is a tree that generously shares its sweet, juicy fruits in early summer. This is the red mulberry, a native species that was prized by indigenous peoples long before the invasive white mulberry from Asia arrived. It was the red mulberry that was part of the original ecosystem and culture. Red mulberry fruits resemble elongated blackberries. As they ripen, they change color from white to red and then to dark purple. Ripe berries are very juicy and sweet, with a pleasant, balanced flavor. Picking mulberries was an easy and enjoyable activity. All you had to do was spread a cloth or skin under the tree and shake the branches. The ripe berries fell off easily, and a large harvest could be gathered in a short time. The main problem with harvesting was the dark purple juice of the berries. It was very stubborn and stained hands and clothes a bright color, but that was a small price to pay for the sweet treat. Mulberries were mainly eaten fresh, right after picking. It was one of the first summer treats that people eagerly awaited after a long winter. Everyone loved its sweet taste. For short-term storage, the berries could be dried. Dried mulberries resembled raisins and were used as a sweetener. However, due to their high moisture content, they were more difficult to dry than other berries. Some tribes made refreshing drinks from mulberries. The berries were crushed and mixed with water to make a sweet, juice-like drink. It was excellent for quenching thirst in hot weather. Red mulberries are a symbol of the generosity of summer nature. Their sweet fruits reminded people of the cyclical nature of life and that after the cold always comes warmth and abundance. We have taken a journey into the world of forgotten flavors, discovering only a small part of the gastronomic heritage of the indigenous peoples of North America. Azimina, Chokecherry, Irga. These names may sound unfamiliar, but behind each of them lies centuries of history of human interaction with nature. These plants not only fed people, they taught, healed, and were an integral part of culture. They prove that wildlife is not just a resource, but a complex system full of hidden treasures and wisdom. The indigenous people's knowledge of these plants is a valuable heritage that we are only beginning to rediscover. Perhaps the future of agriculture and cooking lies not in creating new hybrids, but in returning to these time-tested, sustainable, and incredibly delicious fruits. Please suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. Perhaps you are interested in the architecture, clothing, or social structure of indigenous peoples? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes.